Well, welcome to the fun and mentals of real estate. I think we have a great question of the day for you today in our investor series, and that is
Well, we got a theme: how do smart investors advertise their property for rent?
there you go,
Yeah.
so that you can find that right tenant that we were
Yes.
talking about last
We
week.
talked a lot about the right
Right?
tenant. So how do we find that person? How does that person know that we have what he wants?
Yeah, so there's a great many ways to do this.
So I would think, in my mind, there's only one way,
Okay.
and that is I go to the hardware store and I get a for rent sign and I put it in a board and I nail it in the front yard.
That's a possibility.
I would say maybe I would go to the newspaper, but I don't think there are newspapers anymore. I don't.
They're out there, you just
Oh,
don't get them.
Okay.
Where else would you go, Glenn?
Facebook.
Facebook? Where else would you go?
A Facebook yard sign. I can't go to the multi-list because I'm not a realtor. Instagram, TikTok. I don't know. I'm lost. You're the expert. Tell me where I go.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of yard signs depending on where it is.
Okay.
I do think a yard sign can be really helpful because if you put something on Facebook, just know, and even if it's not on Facebook, that marketplace Facebook, people do go there to find things for rent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because in the marketplace you can just look at the area that you want.
Right.
It's not everything like a,
I
so
think too, if
you
I was
can
gonna-
look by zip code or by
If
say
I was
city
going to
of
drive
Baldwin.
by and check it out, then knowing that for rent sign was there, that would
Yeah,
know
it
that
can,
I had the right
yeah,
house.
because people will take your listing and scam it. And
You
they'll
told me
make
this. It's hard to believe.
this happened
right?
to me on my last one. They'll take it as their own. They'll advertise it on Facebook Marketplace. So that should be your number one clue.
Right.
And then number two, they'll go, hey, you got to pay me X and for a background check before I show you the property. I'm like, well,
The property they don't even own or they have no connection with.
Yeah, some
Wow.
people get smart and they go ahead and they look at other places on other websites to make sure that that's the person. And then they'll find me and go, hey, blah, blah,
That's
blah. And I'm
crazy.
like, yeah, that's not me. You're smart to look around. Did you give her the
I would
money?
stay away from Facebook.
And they're
I
like,
just don't trust
yes, I did give them the money, but I'm going to put a stop on it, whatever. So people do get taken in by scams. So Facebook's not, I know a lot of people who do use Facebook to advertise the rental, but I'm not a really huge fan of renting to someone I know. I would rather rent to someone I don't know because
I would have thought maybe up there was networking, just telling everybody, but that's probably going to mean people that you have a connection.
for me, okay, so this is part of your model.
Right.
For me, it's going to be harder for me to say no.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah,
Right,
'cause
and
then
I
you're gonna look
gotta
bad.
say no sometimes.
Of
This is a
course.
business that it's not always yes, I can be flexible. And part of my personality is I want to make you happy and I want to try to solve your problems and I want to, make this easy and it be a nice experience. So it's gonna be harder for me to say no to someone I know really well.
Okay, so what are some other ways I can advertise it? Because I want the more people I have looking at, the better off I am, right?
Right. So I said I used there's apartments.com. I used them one time. I just put on apartments.com for a while for a couple weeks.
Did you have to pay them?
It's free.
Okay.
There's a lot of places to go where you can do free, and then it'll syndicate to other places, other websites. Let's see, Door Loop. It'll syndicate to other. That's a free site. Turbo Tenant, Trulia, Rent.com. A lot of these places will syndicate to the Zillows and Trulias of the world. You can go to Zillow, but it doesn't syndicate.
Okay.
It just stays on Zillow. But there's a lot of places you can put it in and it'll syndicate to a Zillow and a Realtor.com. You can go straight to Realtor.com.
And really, the reason those sites are free is because they're using that as content, right? That you're providing the content for them.
Sure, and they're hoping that you're going to use them for the background checks too. There's Zumper, Reddit, Rentberry, RentDigs.
It's too many.
Okay, now here's in my experience what's super interesting about this since I am a realtor.
Right.
I ended up just putting in the MLS.
Okay.
And my best tenants have been from realtors.
Interesting. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
But is that because you know a lot of realtors? Is that going back to it's hard to say no, or they get it because they're in the business?
The realtors generally will not take people around who are not qualified.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And sometimes if it's a realtor I know.
So do you pay that realtor a commission?
You can, but it allows you right now. I mean, it allows you to put stuff in there. You don't have to offer a commission.
Okay.
The tenant can pay their realtor, or you can participate in it. It's up to you how you want to do it. So I found that the MLS, since it syndicates everywhere,
Of course. Yeah.
it's not syndicating
Well,
probably
not
to
everybody.
apartments.com.
Probably the average person watching our podcast. I know there's a lot of realtors that watch our podcast, which is good. But just for the average person that I'm giving this business, I'm going to advertise it, yard sign, social media. These sites are all great.
Yeah, and another thing is, I do not utilize open house. I know that's great for selling a house. People have open houses all the time, but I'm not a big fan of the open house for renting.
Too many people you don't know. Too many.
A lot of people you don't know. I think you'll get a lot of people who maybe are not as serious. I know when they're out with a realtor, they're typically serious. They got to rent, and you know what I mean. They got their act together. So the open house can just bring in, who knows, all kinds of people, maybe even dangerous people. Like you don't know, right? And so since I don't want to rent to Dealer Dan.
Yes, or
all
Entitled
right.
Tim,
or
Dirty Darla.
Right. I prefer they just call me. Now, the reason I prefer a phone call first is that you're going to screen them.
That's a great point. So now we've got people calling. We've done the marketing. Now what does that screening process look like?
Yeah. So the phone call is interesting, and this is where your criteria for your ideal tenant, financially speaking, is, and cleanliness, all those sort of things.
And you're going to start from them setting expectations, right?
Yeah, and I don't want drama Darla either. I'm going to... So there's a lot of things I'm going to find out about them just by talking to him on the phone, hearing what's going on in the background, but and then just laying down the standard. I try to lay down some of the standards in advertising sometimes, right? But people don't always read it. They just look at pictures and go, oh, that looks great, and that looks like an interesting, looks like it's in the norm for the rental amount. So once I get them on the phone, I'll just say, hey, what can I tell you about the property? That'll allow them to talk. So sometimes the questions they ask you are a red flag.
Exactly.
Right? And they're like, hey, would you take 6 months rent up front, and could I move in this weekend? And you're like, no. And you're like, oh, no? No. That's not our rental policy. So you need to have like a little questionnaire that you could pull out, and you need to have a rental policy that allows you to not to rent out of desperation, and also not to get yourself in trouble.
Right. So not making, and there's certain questions you can't ask, right?
Yeah, you can.
You can't.
Well, yeah, certain questions you can, but I'm also going to say, like, how many in the party? How many will be living there? Because there is an occupancy limit that the cities and the county are going to limit you for how many people you can put in there. So you can say how many people will be living there, how many adults would be living there, like who's going to be on the lease.
Can you ask them what country they're from? Can you ask them when the baby's due? Can you ask them if they're married?
No, Glenn.
Right. Those are all stuff you can't. Because we were going back to our last podcast, the applicants have rights.
Yeah, right. You can't discriminate based on familiar status, so you can't discriminate against a single mom or people who have kids or whatever. You can say no pets, but again, you have the emotional support pet policy that Missouri has too.
It's a law in Missouri. If you have an emotional support, you can't say no.
And so again, this is where the screening time also is like, just because they apply doesn't mean I have to make up my mind already. I can say I'm taking applications for 2 to 3 weeks. This is a little golden gem because this allows you to pick the best tenant.
And to get some more, not to just pick that first one, get some other applications. Because the more applications you have, the better tenant you can find. It's really a numbers game.
It is numbers. Just like when you're selling a house, you would love to have more than one offer. I would love to have more than one applicant, and you have to give yourself time to be able to get that, to get more than one applicant, so that you can have choices. Otherwise, you put the round peg in the square hole every time because you're like, I need to rent this right now, right?
Suffer. So the other thing now, when do you decide that we're going to take this person who seems qualified enough, now I'm going to show them the property?
Well, here's the first thing I say is my standards are minimum 3 times the rental amount. Your income needs
So
to
now
be
we're
3
still
times.
screening, right? So we want to make sure, right?
Your credit score needs to be above X.
Do you show them the property before they filled out the application? You've done your background
I
check?
will. I will show them
Okay.
before they, as long as I can get through the screening process.
Gotcha.
I'm like, hey, this is no smoking. Are you smoking? Right. This is a no pet house. Do you have pets? You're going to have to pass a background check. You can't have a felony. Do you have any felonies? I can ask that. Okay. All right, I can ask how many people are in the party to see if they exceed the occupancy limit.
So do you do some of the screening at the showing, or you would show everybody the property?
More, that's right. More screening happens at the property because you don't want drama Darla. You don't want, messy Mary.
Drug dealer.
So, right,
yes.
and you don't want, Stoner Dan, right?
Oh, yes,
right,
yeah.
sorry. So you when you meet them, now you're saying, okay, are you a clean person?
Well, I think getting to meet them face to face is going to give you some indication too.
Yeah, what type of person they are, right. All this sort of thing. So type, I mean personality type is what I mean, right? So you get an idea of their personality, and if you've been doing it for a while, you'll be able to figure that out relatively quickly. Right. If there's somebody that is financially sound, and is someone who you could deal with. Right. I can't deal with constant drama in your life. So if you're going to tell me about the 5 drama things that you're in the middle of right now, that's going to be tough for me because I'm just like, I'm never going to know if I'm going to get paid or not rent on time because your life's full of drama. Yeah. And I'm really not here as a charity to try to fix your life. I need you to be sound enough.
We keep going back. This is a business.
It's a business.
You have to
charity.
take the emotion out of it.
That. You can do that for all your friends and family. Just don't do it this way.
Yes.
Right? This isn't the way to help people. Right. That's the thing. Unless you are buying a certain house for charity purposes.
This is not what we're talking about.
This is not what we're talking about.
This is for profit. Right.
That's right.
All right, so we've done advertising, we screened, we've shown the property.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to get down to making our final choice.
Yes.
And again, it's a numbers game. I'm glad we talked about that. The more, the better.
The more, the better. And the more time that you give it, the better. Right. And then, again, that criteria, the things I just mentioned, you might have more. Do you want the 2-year lease? Are you okay with the 1-year lease? Will you take a short-term lease? If they say, hey, can you rent to me for 6 months? My answer is no, because that's not my model.
Right.
N-O. Can you take 4 months deposit? No. Because
the
law doesn't even allow you to in Missouri anyway, right? So I know you don't take pets, but you take a little one. No, because that particular house doesn't have a pet process. It's just a no. That's it. And then, if you start asking them questions about how big the dog is, then you're going down the wrong road, right?
Exactly right.
And so I've had experience with this, and I think just giving yourself enough time and not pulling the trigger too much, having the criteria, and really establishing the standards and screening people with those standards, they will eliminate themselves. They're like,
setting expectations. Right.
Yeah, they're like, hey,
they're not going to pay $45, $50 for a background check if they know that they have evicted from their last 2 places and they have judgments against. Yeah. Right.
It's not going to work. Right. So once you do meet them at the property and they pass that screening, then you're like, hey, here's the link. Go ahead, pay for your application if they like the house, and then you see if everything they told you is actually true.
Interesting. Wow. It's a lot of work, but I mean, it's so great.
And you can hire a management company to do this for you.
That's a great point.
But then again, this is going to be in one of our top 10 mistakes people make about making their rentals profitable. You have to figure that in because that costs money. Nobody works for free.
Right.
Right.
But I could see though, if you were busy, and you bought this house and you didn't have the free time, hiring a management company to do this for you might
and
be worthwhile.
You can hire someone just to get you a tenant. You don't necessarily have to hire them to manage it. Or you can get the tenant yourself and let them manage it. There's all kinds of hybrid ways to go here. But again, finding out your model and your time and how much your time's worth is, how you got to do it.
Well, this is very helpful. I've learned so much. Maybe
Fantastic.
Someday I'll get back into it.
So we're going to do, I guess next week, we're going to do the top 10 mistakes people make that make their rentals unprofitable, right? Yeah. So you want to make the right choices to make it profitable.
Awesome.
So hopefully this helped you out, and I appreciate you watching. We'd love to hear about your experiences. Give us a like, give us a follow.
And maybe questions you might have.
There you go. Yeah. I'm Angela Dillman here at the Dillman Group, at Keller Williams Realty Chesterfield. And this is my wealth building partner,
Glenn Calvin, Guild Mortgage,
And
also in Chesterfield.
There you go. We are here to help you build wealth
Live your dream lifestyle.
and leave legacies that matter. Till next week.